Test. The Fiha now bleibt Likutei schwer. Based on the above, seemingly remains difficult because here we're saying that you needed to cover it with the two coverings, the Kivala Es HaKodesh, to sort of make it into a total cover, but we find some of the kalim did not get that double cover. And the Rebbe explains that those kalim weren't actually as important to require two kalim. Let's look inside. Tesla, now black schwer. Based on the above, it's still remaining difficult. By the Mizbech Hanachosis state, by the copper Mizbech, it's written, Ufarsu Olav Beged Argomon, that you should place over the copper Mizbech, that's the Mizbech Hachitze, a Argomon garment, a purple garment, the nosnu olav as kol kalim. Then on top of that, you put all the kalim, and then upars olav kisui oir tachash. Then over all of this, you put this outside cover of tachash. Kum dachosh. It turns out as the kalim for the mizbach hanechoshes, that these vessels of the copper mizbeach seine gewen verdeckt mit bloß ein kisui. They only had one cover. Hi, so if that will occur, wie schickt sich der Inyan Kivala Es HaKodesh? How could we interpret, how could we send this idea when this swallowed? And we said that swallowed means with an outside kisui. They didn't have these kalim on outside kisui. They just had one kisui. Oich of the Klei Mizbeach and Achoshes, on the vessels of the copper Mizbeach, which only had one. And the Rebbe explained because that wasn't taka the same level of kedusha. They're beating them. The explanation is the kedusha is a kelim from mizbech hachitzin unazoich from shulchan. The sanctity of the kelim of the outer mizbech, and the same thing is the kelim of the shulchan, which were also placed on the shulchan on the cover, is in pashtus given a klemere. So simply speaking, there was a lesser one from the kedushas hamizbech v'shulchan gufa than the sanctity of the mizbeach and the table itself. Their vessels that served them was not at the same level. But this is verstandig from them. This is also understood from the fact was man hat Perish given a beggar zwischen dem Mizbeach mit Kol Kelov, that they had a cover in between the Mizbeach and the vessel that were put on top of that garment. Weil derech zet zwischen dem Shulchan mit seine Kelim, similarly between the table and the Kelim, they had this extra garment. Bichdei zu mafsig sein zwischen dem Mizbeach und Shulchan mit seine Kelim, in order to make an interruption between the Mizbeach and also the shulchan with their kalim. So that means that the kalim were not at the same level. They need to be separated over a cover. There's a cover, and the kalim came atop of them. As the kleam is kedusha, since they had a lesser kedusha, the Rebbe Parzei must be given euch en kisu. That's why it was sufficient to have one cover alone. Now, was this case didn't nit lahanal? That's not a contradiction. We find other serving vessels that had two covers. Was the klei shoros from Mizbeach Hazov, the serving vessels of the gold Mizbeach, the inner Mizbeach, Hom Yegedav Tzvei Kisuim, they did have two covers. The pasuk says, "V'nosnel beget tcheles." They gave the klei shoros of the Mizbeach Hazov into the Beged Chel, Bekiso Oisum Michsa Tochash, and then on top of that they covered it Michsa Tochash, even though they were only Kalim of the Mizbech, Vamid the Klishoris Hotna Mishoris given, because these Klishoris, they didn't just serve Nit nor Mizbech Apanim. It's not just that they served on the Mizbech, nor Oich B'toich HaMishkan Shu Kodesh. Rashi quotes over there, it was in the Mishkan, which is Kodesh. Mizbech HaPnimi is one thing, but Mizbech HaPnimi was in the Mishkan, and the Mishkan is Kodesh. The Rebbe to lead Zeir Gadlus HaKedusha, because of their great Kedusha, they needed two covers. So the fact that the Mizbech Hazov need two covers, but the other, the Kalim of the Shulchan and the Kalim of the Mizbech HaChitzin, over there, that was sufficient, one cover for them. In Ois Yud, The Rebbe is going to finish up explaining the other questions in the Rashi. Rashi says Michse Ploni, and the Rebbe is machadish here that the beged that covered the orin wasn't a beged that was was not a fitted beged like we were talking about before. There was nartikoi, they were all fitted to them because the michse, we said, was not a fitted one. And by the order, the michse came first, and then you put the beged. How could the beged, which is a fitted one, go on top of the michse, which is not a fitted one? So we have to say that this beged was not really uh, a fitted one, and therefore that's also a michzah, and that's what Rashi says plain. Let's look inside. Yud. Apia now, based on the above, as yet the beged is given to gepasst leuten tzirumos from sein keli. That every beged was fitted according to the shape and the measure of its keli. Was the mithil tzuchois beged fun michzah. That's the distinction between a garment and a cover. A garment is a fitted, and a michzah is just a general cover. Muzman zogen, so that we have to say as der beged klil techelis, that the garment of klil techelis that covered over the michse, was man not pedish given ofen oren milmailu, that they spread over the oren above, iber dem kisu oirtachash, on top of the cover of the oirtachash, is in them prat given anders von alle andere big day hakelim. In this detail, it was different than all the other garments of the kelim, that it wasn't really a measured, it wasn't a fitted to the kelim. Warum es kann doch nicht gemold sein, es kann doch nicht sein gemold. You cannot imagine as noch dem was mit der regulator von Oren Akiser Tachash, after they placed on the Oren cover of Tachash, nit Leut der Geneur Mos von Oren, not fitting to the measure of the Oren. So man if you can onto a Bege, then you can put on a garment was is hier angemossen und zugepasst zum Oren, which is measured and fits the Oren. That's not possible. Muss man darüber sagen. So therefore we have to say, as der Posik ruft him on mit Nomen Beget Klil Tchelis. Why does it call him a garment of Klil Tchelis? It wasn't measured. Nor der Far was at his punkt wie a Beget Bechlal, but only because it's a just general Beget given the Yuchat Tzumor. It was used only for the more. Trotz dem was is given nit kfi midose mit zum tzemes, despite the fact that this particular garment that was over the Aron was not measured according to the Aron. It didn't have the exact size because it wouldn't fit, but it's still called a beggar because it was used only for the Aron. Unit wie kisoir tachash, unlike the cover tachash, was der selber michsot maybe can nutzen for jeder kele. Over there, you can use the same cover for every kele. It wasn't measured, but here you didn't use it only for the or. Und damit wird verstanden, was Rashi sagt Loschen b'michse ploin. Now we understand what Rashi says with this cover, not saying unit michse tachash, and not in the cover of Tachash, weil mit dem Wort Ploini is oisen zu Keulu sein, because here Rashi is intent to also include Oich dem Beged Klit Chelis, because this Beged Klit Chelis was really a michse, it wasn't really a Beged, it was only a Beged because it was designed, it was meant only for the Oren, but it wasn't fitted for the Oren. Was sein dik nit kfi midos Oren, since it's not according to the measure of the Oren, is a given nit mer a michse, it was only a cover, it didn't have the shape or the unique of the Oren. Mit dem wird euch recht. Now we also understand. Euch recht werden will also understand. Von was Rashi bringt up früher uparsol of Beged Ploini. Why first Rashi starts with they put the Beged Ploini, even though by the Oren it was first a michse. We said before, and the Oren comes first. And here Rashi starts off the first thing with the Beged Ploni, und the noch the Chisois of Michse Ploni, and then to say they're covered with Michse. Why start with Beged before Michse, even though by the Oren Michse was first, and the Oren is the first one mentioned in the Psukim. Hagamas beim Oren dem erste von the Kelim, although by Oren, which is the first of the vessel, steht uforsu Beged noch venos no kiso. There it says the garment comes after the cover. But Beged mean do Rashi azah, because when Rashi says Beged, Rashi means such was is lifi midas hakeli. When they're talking about the Ger, Rashi talks about the measure of the keli, the Beged, which is an artic, and it's a fitted to the keli. Und der Beged von Orden ist doch genau in Zug von Michse. And this Beged is the kind of cover. Und hayois, as their sort Beged is given blows by the andere kelim, there was no Beged fitted by the Orden at all. Only other kelim was a kommt doch far Michse, and over there comes for Michse. So if you're going to say Beged, the real Beged, the Beged which is an artic, which is a fitted one, this wasn't such a thing by the Orden. The Rebbe is Rashi in Magdim Echbi Pirusha. That's why Rashi brings it also first in his commentary. Einer von den